Hey, welcome to Screaming Geek Media. I am Jerry. I am going to be your host for these proceedings. What I have for you today is the first of a series called The Evolution of Physical Media. Today's episode, we're going to discuss the videotape formats, such as VHS, digital VHS, Super VHS, Video 8. But before we do, if you've yet not subscribed to my channel, please do so. Hit those like and subscribe buttons and check out the content I have, such as unboxings, reviews, collection updates, custom covers. Turn your bell notifications on and keep up to date. So I've been thinking about doing this video for quite some time now, as I've been a collector since the beginning, back in VHS days, and I thought it'd be cool to kind of look back at where it all started. Most people today, they know DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K, but they don't know what it was like watching movies on tape back in the day. Before we get into the video cassette formats, let's talk a little bit about the 8mm film, because there were some people that watched film at home. They were condensed a lot of times in 17, 18 minutes for a reel, because the reels were so large, and the speed, the capacity wise, it wasn't there. Early films were silent, and in 1965 the Super 8 format was launched, and in 1973 the film version included the sound, projectors. So there was a slight market for movies at home at the time. Now to jump into the whole video cassette tapes, it got to a point this electronics companies was thinking of the consumer maybe wanting to record content off TV, off cable channels and whatnot. So they wanted to come up with something to do that. So Sony came up with the U-matic machine. It was a 3/4 inch tape compared to VHS was a 1/2 inch tape. They launched in 1971. It was geared toward the consumer, but due to high production costs, it just wasn't there. It wasn't feasible to release to the markets. So they shifted their marketing strategy they pushed it toward the professional markets and teaching. Throughout the 70s, it was widely used through the TV broadcasting industry. A year after U-matic was launched, Philips introduced their own videotape format in 1972, and they actually called the format VCR, but not because of the machine. They called it video cassette recording, and it was mainly marketed in UK and mainland Europe. Then it was announced they were going to produce in the US, but that never materialized, so that just got abandoned completely, and that format was toast. After U-matic, Sony and Matsushita, which is over JVC, they broke away and decided to go out and do their own formats. Sony started developing Betamax, and the JVC engineers started working on VHS. So it kind of became the war at the beginning, and some of you out there might have remembered the VHS Betamax war. Basically, once Sony had the prototype for Betamax, they persuaded the MITI, which is Ministry of International Trade and Industry, to adopt Betamax as a standard and allow it to license the technology to other companies. But JVC, on the other hand, they wanted an open standard which would allow the technology to be freely shared to competitors. They thought overall that would be the best for the consumer. So to prevent MITI from adopting Betamax, JVC worked with several other companies to accept the VHS and try to work against Sony. They did not want Sony to become the leader in the industry and have control of everything. So once these other companies were on board with that, the MITI dropped their push for one standard and let the companies develop their own formats and release. We'll discuss Betamax first. It was the first to get released. Betamax was launched by Sony in Japan in May of 1975 and followed by the US release in November of the same year. The first Betamax device to be introduced in the US was this Sony's LV1901 console, and included a 19-inch monitor as well. Kind of old school, like you saw the old record players. There's a few shots of it. As well as a couple other early Betamax machines. Retail prices on base machines were just under $2,000, with higher end models going for almost $2,300. Now moving on to the movie side, I'm not sure when studios started releasing movies onto the Betamax. All I know is that through my searches, I did see that Star Trek the Motion Picture was released on Beta in 1980. So that might have been roughly the start of it, maybe before. Did a lot of search, I just could not find that info. And what all was released, I was looking for a list of movies. But today you can go on eBay and you can actually find quite a few betas released at fairly decent prices if you're interested in having some for your collection. I picked this one up, Hunt for October, and it's got, looks like VHS, but it's got the beta sticker on. Even though it's, it's the same size as a VHS, but the tape itself is smaller. So the case itself has a little filler cardboard there and a piece up on top. And it makes sense to have this the same size as VHS. That way you design artwork, it's easy. You just come up with a design, works for both cases. So I think it's a no-brainer. Now the last major studio release on Betamax, what I believe was a Mission Impossible in 1996. And although Betamax was widely considered obsolete, Sony continued to manufacture the machines until August 2002, when they announced they were going to discontinue all their Betamax. Now on to VHS, which actually VHS stands for Video Home Standard. The first VCR to use VHS was a Victor HR 3300 by JVC in Japan of September 1976. The US received its first VHS deck in August of 1977, the RCA VBT200. The first VCRs ranged from anywhere from $1,000 to $1,400 if you got a base model or wanted something with some more bells and whistles. Here we have our family's very first VCR. It's an RCA. As you can tell, it's pretty much a beast. Got the top loader. Up here we have different controls, some different fine tunings for your different TV stations. To be honest, it's been so long, don't remember how it actually works, but it's pretty crazy. Go to your buttons for different channels, and their readouts, and you got your memory and resets, which is kind of your early indexing. This was cool, so if you recorded say 2 or 3 movies on a one cassette, you can easily jot down what the counter was so you can find out where the movies were. Also, you got the power button, the VCR, and then you got the timer where you can program to record stuff. Got the multiple speeds, SP, LP, SLP, and you got the flip down drawer. There's all your programming. You got your tracking, setting the program and clock. On the bottom you got the slide open drawer for some additional hookups. And this for your remote control. They were not wireless when I started. And of all your controls, you can see here, this is an audio dub. This was usually only put on your higher end models, which made it nice for home editing. You can take video and dub, port over music from external source and dub music onto your video tracks. I made some roller coaster videos that way. It was pretty cool. But yeah, this here, doesn't work anymore. It's been sitting at my dad's house collecting dust for years. After he passed a couple years ago, so I went back to Ohio and I went ahead and I brought this home with me. And the picture here is actually the remote control. Forgot to bring it with me, but so I had my brother take pictures of it and send to me. But it's pretty funny seeing how things worked in the old days. Big clunky remote, actually wired to it. And you can see the back is pretty simple. Got your standard audio out and video out, channel selector, your VHF in and out UHF. And you can see this was made in 1981, RCA model. Okay, now that we've talked about the VHS hardware, let's talk about the movies, pre-recorded movies that's been released on VHS. I'm not sure date-wise, but through my research, I found the first release of VHS was The Young Teacher. It was a South Korean drama. The first American films released on VHS were The Sound of Music, MASH, Hello Dolly, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, French Connection, The King and I. Now, as far as rentals go, the first video store in the U.S. was the Video Station in Los Angeles, and opened in 1977 in December. To start, the owner only licensed about 50 titles to get started. Now, in December 1979, Photomat, which was a chain of drive-up photo processing kiosk, they start offering movies for rent. Customers call in, they look through a catalog, call in, request what they wanted, and next day they'd go pick up movies at the kiosk of their choice. At the time, the rental cost was $12 per title, and the customer could keep for 5 days. Then the price was lowered to $9.95 for a 5-day rental. The service was called Photomat Drive-Thru Movies. Initially, only Paramount entered into the agreement, but in 1980, Walt Disney Home Entertainment jumped in, began offering their first videos for rental through Photomat. Later on, MCA struck a deal as well. But in 1982, the service was discontinued due to local video stores popping up. Now, when we got our VCR, had to be in the 81, 82 time frame. Our hometown of Van Wert, Ohio, there was no video stores at that time. The next big market was, about an hour away, about 45 minutes maybe, Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's where we got the VCR. And they had a company over there. I can't remember what their name was, but they offered a delivery service, and we signed up for that, and we would get movies brought to us by a driver every Saturday. At the time, that was pretty cool shit. I had friends coming over, hey, let's check out the movies. The driver would come in, and if we didn't like what they brought, we'd go out to the car with them and show what other ones he's had. Maybe got some that were returned from other customers, and we'd go rummage through. I think we got 2 movies at a time, I believe. I can't remember. I could be wrong. And every once in a while, we would give them a list of movies we would be interested in, and they would, try to fulfill those. But yeah, it was pretty cool. We had that for 2 or 3 years before Van Wert actually got their very first video store. Now, when Van Wert finally did get their first store, it was some local owners. They own another store over in the next town over, and they only opened up on Wednesday and Saturdays. Not a new thing. Wasn't sure how it would go. You rent, I believe it was like $5 or so. And if you rent it on Wednesday, you bring it back on Saturday, and then if you rent it on Saturday, you bring it back Wednesday. And after a certain period of time, they finally decided to start opening for the rest of the week. And at the time, I believe I was probably 14, 15 at the time, because I wasn't driving yet, and I wanted a job, and I went to the owner of the video store and asked him about working for him. And I basically just started out as a gopher. I just do all kinds of things I do around the store for him, if I need to go run errands for him. And over time, I learned a lot about the video business, and I really enjoyed it. Now, at the time, there was two major distributors that video stores across the U.S. got their movies from. I know we got ours through Major Video Concepts, MVC. There was one other one, I can't remember the name, but I know we got most of ours from MVC. Now that video stores were becoming a household name, people started wanting to have the movies for their own collections, and they started copying movies. They'd rent, get a couple of VCRs and hook up and copy movies. And it wasn't, today, there's a lot of piracy going on with home video. But back then, people just wanted to have them for themselves. They couldn't afford the high prices. Because at the time, movies cost, the retails were like $70 to $80. And who could buy, who could afford to buy those movies? Not many did. So people started buying them on the, copying them, keeping them for themselves. Even Disney at the beginning. In 1984, Robin Hood was released with a suggested retail price of $79.95 on VHS and Beta, and $34.95 on Laserdisc. And even the dealer cost of the VHS titles were like $57 on up. I know after a while, I know the norm was like $64 after a while. I saw the catalogs, and it was always fun every month to see the new catalogs come in, see what's coming out. I actually did buy some movies at that $60 price. The owner was able, he sold them to me for his cost plus a couple bucks. So with that in mind, with people the studios started seeing, claiming they're losing money. People, they were losing money by people not buying, and they're copying them. Seeing a need for the movies, they wanted lower prices. Which brings us to this, Top Gun. This movie, I think, is what we can look back on, and what actually it changed how we looked at the industry as far as movie sales. It was what they called a sell-through price, and it was, the movie came out in '86. It was released on VHS in March of 1987, and it was suggested retail price of $26.95, and at the time that was unheard of for a movie to be that cheap. So Paramount did a lot of marketing campaign. I believe it was Pepsi. So that's the reason I picked up this VHS. I had it originally, but of course I gave away a lot of my VHS over the years. But so I wanted to get this because this is what really started the whole thing, look back on. But not all movies were coming through at that price. It was still, they'd pick and choose popular ones that they thought they could really make a ton of money on. E.T. was one of those titles. For the longest time, Spielberg was refusing to release it on VHS. He did not want it out there. He wanted to keep reissuing it at the theaters. That's where he saw the money at. But finally, in 1988, they convinced him to release it on VHS, and with a big campaign with Pepsi, there was a suggested retail price was $24.95, and then you get a $5 mail-in rebate through Pepsi, and so you end up with a movie for, $20. Another one I remember was Good Morning Vietnam. That was another sell-through title. Again, off and on, Even Terminator, when it came out, I'm surprised it was not a sell-through title. So I wanted to have it in my collection. So if I remember right, even a dealer cost on Terminator 2 was about $72, $74, and the store agreed to, not charge me the $100, $105 or $10 retail price. So they tacked on a few dollars, so I think I paid like $78 for Terminator 2 when it came on VHS. A couple other ones I picked up over the time. I remember I paid dealer for these. Classic, The Boogans, and Peter Weller and Sam Elliott, called The Shakedown. I almost completely forgot about that. I was searching through. Again, unfortunately, when I got into DVD, I gave away most of my VHS collection, but held on to a few. A couple other ones I know I have, I just don't know where they're at, was the original Faces of Death, and Silent Night, Deadly Night. Because at the time they were kind of banned from a lot of places. Stores would not carry them, so I just forked out the money and bought them myself. So I know I still have those in my collection. Now, the last major Hollywood studio movie they were released on VHS was A History of Violence with Viggo Mortensen. Other movies that preceded that, this was in 2006, and Jarhead, Ice Harvest, Pride and Prejudice, Domino, The Legend of Zorro, Doom, Just Friends, Saw 2. Those were all the last bunch of VHS movies to be released. But in 2019, Paramount did a special thing for the Bumblebee release. They didn't release it publicly for sale, but they did release Bumblebee in a limited edition VHS. So there are copies in existence if you can find them. I'm sure you're going to. Now, as if the consumer wasn't confused enough with having two incompatible formats out there with VHS and beta, film giant Kodak wanted to play with their own ball and introduced the whole new format of videocassettes, known as Video 8 or 8mm. I know personally when I was doing research, I didn't realize, I thought it was a Sony thing because of Handycams and all that, but from this I learned that Kodak was the ones that come out with the technology. It was launched in 1984 and it was aimed at the video camera market. They wanted more compact, at the time, VHS they came out with VHS C compact, but Kodak wanted to take it further and made it even smaller. Like VHS, the resolution was only 240 lines, and soon after, Carl Video announced it would market its first pre-recorded 8mm tapes, which would include the Jane Fonda workout tapes. Woohoo! 1985, we saw Sony enter the 8mm market with its first Handycam, and they announced pre-recorded content would be coming out later in the year. But it was slow going. Over time, they didn't get a whole lot out, but even in '86, I think the format started doing a little bit more. Sony put out a few, and other studios kind of started playing around with the idea of putting movies out there and supporting it. And by 1992, there's supposedly about 1,800 movies on the format, so it was going pretty good. One of the last movies that were released on 8mm was Out of Sight, which was in 98, 99, but they continued to produce exclusive ones for the airline industry for in-flight movies until 1999. You can find quite a few of the Video 8mm tapes on eBay. And I've got this one, the Patriot Games. You can see that's about the size of a regular cassette. When I showed this to my wife, I was like, oh, isn't it so cute? And she just rolled her eyes at me because she hates me spending money, especially on obsolete formats. But by 2007, the last, due to the mini DVDs and the mini DVD format digital cameras coming out, there wasn't much of a market. There was a decline in market for 8mm. So in the high 8 camcorder and the digital 8 camcorders were both discontinued. Now we'll jump back over to JVC with the VHS side, and they introduced in 1987 Super VHS. They upped the lines of resolution. They jumped it up to 420, where VHS was only 240. I'm not sure. Again, for the research, I couldn't find out when the studio started putting out pre-recorded movies on Super VHS, or how many. I can't find a list. I just know of a few that I did see. Some notable releases I did see was Godfather 3, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghost, RoboCop, Princess Bride, The Hunt for October, and Blade Runner. I was hoping to get one for my collection to use for the video, but they're extremely rare and high priced. This one here was on eBay for $80, and I was like, I don't think so. I figured I'd just show you a picture instead, but yeah, Super VHS, very rare. You know, the good thing with JVC and their VHS formats is they always made it backward compatible. So the Super VHS machines, you could play any of your old VHS copies, you know, no problem. Which brings us to the fifth and final videocassette tape format that we're going to discuss today. The DVHS. Originally it was known as Data VHS, but right away, soon after they announced, they changed the name to Digital VHS. They just felt was better. It was launched in 1998, right after the introduction of DVD, which I thought was kind of odd. Why would you introduce a new tape format when you got a shiny new disc out there that's going to hold up better? It uses the same physical cassette format and recording mechanisms as the Super VHS, but it is capable of recording both standard definition and high definition content. You know, they want to step up, you know, the digital market. You know, digital TV high definition was out there now, so they wanted this format for people to they could record high definition content if they wanted. And then, you know, the format, they basically utilized the newer MPEG compression technology, and the resolution was listed at 720p or 1080i. It was capable of doing both. There's a couple pics of some of the early decks. Now for the pre-recorded content, those in 2002, the studios start putting out some DVHS cassettes, but they were sold under the brand name D-Theater. While they are DVHS, they are not compatible with standard DVHS decks. You need to get a newer deck that actually has a D-Theater logo on it. And the studios were providing content in both 1080i, 720p. And it all had at least one Dolby Digital track. Additional audio tracks like DTS could be included on the D-Theater types. However, only the newest decks that included alternate track capabilities. So a lot of mass confusion. I can understand why I just never really caught on. So given a wholesale move to DVD and then hard disk drive recording, digital VHS failed to make headway into the video market. Some studios, those Fox, Universal, Artisan, I forget what the fourth one. I think there was 4 studios that did back the digital VHS format. And you can find some of these D-Theater tapes, you can find them on eBay. Not too bad prices. I picked up this the day after tomorrow. I picked this one up because I actually had the DTS track on it. As you can see, it's got the D-Theater logo. It's a nice clamshell case. And the cassette tape in there. Things. So, pretty nice packaging. It's got the DTS, Dolby Digital. That's a 1080i 16:9 frame aspect ratio, MPEG 2, and Region 1, in which I forgot to mention that the digital VHS, the D-Theater, did have regional coding. They had, if I remember right, those 3 regions. So that brings us to the end of the videocassette tapes for edition of the series. The evolution of physical media. My next couple will be about the video disc. There are so many, so I'm going to divide it up. Next one will be analog video disc, and then we'll move on to digital video disc. I hope you enjoyed this video, especially people in my generation. Looking back, I hope it was nostalgic. Take it back in time, so remember some of the stuff that was, it was cool stuff back then. For those of you, that grew up with DVD, I hope this was kind of a learning session for you to kind of see how lucky you were to have, the higher quality formats compared to what VHS was. It's bad now. To look back on a VHS tape now, it's like, man, it looks like crap, but man, back then it was hot shit. So again, please like and subscribe to my channel, and turn your bell notifications on, and keep up to date with any future content I'm going to have. Please keep in touch. Out.